There you go.
Okay, the intent of this presentation is to provide an overview of the product and its pre-production planning documentation, and what the aims and objectives were outlined as being the production of a multi-platform interactive guide for Digital Cathedral, and the research phase sort of consisted of 5 aspects: client and audience needs, already existing products, technologies and platforms, location and content, and legal and ethical considerations, in that order. And basically, I'll be talking through that. It's just like a Gantt chart, basically showing what the intended end state of the production is, and when it will be finished and stuff like that. So, hang on, a bit early. For client and audience needs, I referred to predominantly there's in terms of just client and audience needs. I referred to the cathedral sort of web presence, and they were quite clear about that they want to have as broad an audience as possible, that they welcome everybody from any culture and any ethnic background, and therefore it is crucial to target this product at as broad an audience as possible, and therefore the functionality should also be very accessible and accommodate blind people, deaf people, and so on. And the navigation should also be relatively straightforward and self-explanatory. So, in order to inform platform and method consideration, I looked at these are some examples from the research I've done in that. This is the application for Coventry Cathedral. It's for a smartphone, and it's distributed on iOS and Android, and as you can see, it's quite, this is the actual navigation of it, and as you can see, it's a floor plan, and it has different sort of points of interest illustrated by little thumbnails of what they are actually representing, and you can browse it that way and look at it, and it also gives you a little bit of information, as you can see in the following picture. And this was quite influential in sort of influencing, well, it's going to be it influenced this product quite heavily. And one thing that, however, didn't do quite that well is, I think, personally, is the amount of information and sort of the purpose of it, because it seems like an application that you'd use more externally, like there wouldn't be much point in bringing this to the cathedral itself. There's just no point to it, really. There's a panoramic view that you can refer to look at areas inside the cathedral, but you wouldn't really need that when you're in there. So I thought with this product it would be better to make something that's suitable for both inside and outside of the cathedral. Next I investigated Google Street View, and that was in order to see if maybe I could do something that had a sort of like a virtual environment that you could navigate instead of just doing like a floor plan. But ultimately, this would have taken too long in terms of production time, and it also could have possibly convoluted the navigational process, because it would just be too complex, because you'd have to actually navigate like a space digitally in order to find anything, and that would be a bit counterintuitive if all you want to do is just look up a certain section of the cathedral, for instance. Then, in terms of technologies, I investigated various platforms, and the one ultimately put forward ended up being a smartphone application, and well, that actually consists of several platforms in and of itself, because smartphones have different operating systems that they run on. And the benefits of smartphone applications lie in the distribution and the production costs, particularly. They're quite inexpensive, and you can easily distribute them because you don't need to give them give people any hardware or anything. They need to have it, which is also the actual downside of this because they require a smartphone device to actually use it. And this becomes particularly problematic when accessibility becomes a factor because blind people don't. I think blind people are, and based on my research, blind people are more likely to have a mobile phone instead of a smartphone simply because the touchscreen technology isn't optimal for their circumstances. So, in order to circumvent that, it was thought that perhaps we could create like an additional platform as well. If we could create a podcast as an additional platform, which uses all the voiceovers used within the application in order to string together a narrative out of that, and have it like set up in chapters so you could navigate it just like this application that I'm going to be talking about. And also other platforms I looked at were HTML and the use of RFID tags. What I thought about that is that HTML seemed a bit redundant because with smartphones you could target the device more specifically. You could use the intuitive interface that a smartphone provides with the touchscreen and like maximize the effect of that. And RFID tags, they were just a bit intrusive, I find. I wouldn't know where to place them inside the cathedral because it's such a nice monument. It already has so much material in it. It would be strange to have a QR code in every single corner. And additionally, it was considered using some sort of public access computer inside for HTML distribution if that was the scenario selected. But the problem with that is that it would require a lot of maintenance and correspondingly also require a lot of costs. And it would also be limited, similarly RFID tags would also be limited to internal use and would be less versatile than, say, a smartphone application, which you could use both externally and internally. For location and content, I mainly looked at that just to sort of get an idea of the design considerations that had to be made in order to figure out how to design the actual product. Legal and ethical considerations, there were quite a lot, plentiful. For instance, Google Play Store and the Android app and the Apple App Store both have policies and certain like licensing and restrictions and all sorts of legal things that have to be paid attention to in case those platforms are used for distribution. Additionally, the religious nature of the content had to be portrayed with a certain sensitivity to other cultures and ethnic backgrounds, and must provide a certain neutrality to that, instead focusing more on the factual and historical significance. And also we have to ask for permission and also double check with the cathedral the contents of the future product in order to make sure that it reflects, that it doesn't like spread misinformation, or that we are actually allowed to use these images and this information and put it into the application to distribute. So then, here comes the bulk of it, basically, for the mock-ups, and in this case, the visual sequential narrative. This is a sketch, and it kind of roughly shows how it's divided up, probably a bit harder to see. Here it's a bit clearer. As you can see, these are divided into different sections. So you have here's one section, there's one section, there's one section, and there's one section. And this was done for navigational purposes, as I will show soon once the mock-ups show up. And within each section, you can find several points of interest, which will be relevant. Oh yeah, and the trigger mechanism in place, which was visible there, was at the very entrance. It would be a trigger mechanism in the sense that it would be a small stand featuring a QR code, a single QR code, and you'd scan it, and it would take you to a website. And on the website, it would like detect the language settings, and also compatibility settings in case the phone is incompatible with the application, and be sure that that works, and then suggest the language to pick in order to direct the user to the right download, so that it's as simple as possible to access. Then for the end user experience, here's a sketch of like the initial, this is the information window, and this is like the generic template for all the different points of interest that you can select. The black, as this was then refined, and then it was turned into the final mock-up, basically, or the final, how do you say? Yeah, like the final design of it for now. At the top you can see the black bar is just like the phone HUD, like where you would have like battery power, time, stuff like that. The arrow is for going back. It's simple enough. The tabs are special because they're meant to be categorical. That means, for example, if you're looking at a chapel, like a page of a chapel, one of the many chapels in a cathedral, it would have a tag that says chapel, and if you click it, it would bring up a search list of like all the chapels inside Chichester Cathedral, so you could easily navigate it without having to necessarily go out and then go back in. And, yeah. Then this part is a gallery, like the pictures, they're a gallery. You can slide it left and right and look at the different pictures, and if you click them, you can bring up like a lightbox sort of function. And the rest underneath is just the information basically, and on the top right you can see the small listen button, which can be used to activate the voiceover in the respective language selected in order to, well, listen to it. And the scroll bar just shows in which part of the text you are. I'm not sure how long the duration would be, what the font size would be like, but the font size should be modular in order to accommodate for accessibility. Then this is the navigation, and as you can see, it's a floor plan, and the 1, 2, 4, if you can see that, like the nave and side aisles, that you can move up and down in order to select which area of the cathedral you're looking at, and each area will come up like that and show you the different points of interest so you can select them. One thing about this is that the resolution has well, the resolutions have to be considered so that you can that it scales a bit more, because in this picture it might be a bit small, like some of the text might be really too tiny to see, so that will have to be considered during the production process as well. And at the top, the tab buttons previously, they would be instead like the natural search function, like by category, where you could just go right into chapels or whichever similar objects there are. And the application, well, in order to get from one page to the other, there's just, you just tap like the little dot and it will bring you to that page. And the application itself will be produced using the PhoneGap SDK, and that SDK is designed for multi-platform productions in particular, and permits development for several different phone platforms at the same time. So whilst you still need the SDKs from the respective developers of the operating system of the phone, you only need to really make it once, and then you can export it to the different platforms, which will save a lot of time and is a lot more efficient. Additionally, the 124 system suggests like a sequence, basically. That means it can also function as a guided tour in that you might want to look at these areas of the cathedral in that order. So conclusively, the strengths of the platform within the inexpensive nature of its production distribution. The strengths of the platform selected, it's multiple platforms, it's several different operating systems of phones, is that they're cheap to produce and to distribute, because you don't have to worry about anything tangible really. It's mostly just yeah. And then also you have intuitive touch controls, and it is a lot more versatile in terms of where it can be accessed both internally and externally. And weaknesses that are inherent in the platform are, for instance, the target audience, in that it's just not the right demographic for blind people. But if you offer like a separate podcast solution, you can circumvent that in a sense. Or if they have like friends or family with them anyway, that would resolve a lot of things. and so they could just activate the voiceover. And regular updates will also require updating for all the different phone platforms individually, which might take a lot of time. But I think that's a consideration with every sort of product solution in this field anyway. So I just put it in just in case it actually came matter. Notable opportunities for this sort of online capacities of the application. It's maybe possible to integrate an RSS feed for event listings, for instance, or maybe even like a GPS detection, so that on that map you could actually see yourself as this little arrow or something, just to indicate where you are. That could be kind of cool if that's possible, but I'm not sure about that. And there's also room for expansion to other phone platforms, since there's more than just Android and Apple. And the biggest threats are actually the development of new smartphone technologies, because it might get incompatible over time because it's an ever-evolving sort of field, and therefore it might take additional investments to resolve it. That's it. Any questions?
When people scan the QR code, will that be through the cathedral's Wi-Fi or their own internet?
I think we would try and set something up with the cathedral's Wi-Fi, but that would have to be negotiated with them.
Okay.
Also, to mention that again, there would actually also be a hyperlink underneath it, just in case they don't have a QR reader, so that it's hard to think that people unfamiliar with QR codes don't have to jump through any hoops.
So would it would either link you to some information about how to acquire a QR reader or how to work with it?
No, the idea was that it would just both the QR code and the hyperlink would just link to a website.
Right, okay.
So you had both there available, but just whatever is more useful or more accessible to you, I suppose.
Oh, right, to the individual requirement.
Yeah.
Okay. So the method you're going to use to build your prototype is a basic structure that can be exported for many different platforms for mobile devices. So there is a software.
The reason PhoneGap is going to be used is precisely because it has this cross-platform ability, so that you can just develop for one platform first, but then it's quite easy to port it to other platforms.
Right. Okay. And this is a free thing, and it's an online.
The only thing that would cost something is the fact that you actually do need the Android or Apple SDKs as well in conjunction with PhoneGap.
Right, I see. And
if you're going to distribute it on the stores.
Okay, are they? How expensive are those? Do you know?
I believe the fee for Android would be about £25, and for Apple I think it's 100.
Oh right.
That's for the store fees at least.
Right. Okay. And that's for the listing and distribution.
As well, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is very inexpensive if you consider other solutions to this.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah. It's very inexpensive in the greatest scheme of things. Okay. Are there any other comments or questions you'd like to ask Ben?
I think it was quite interesting that you've considered some alternative methods of accessing it. So I mean, it was quite interesting to think about doing a 3D Google Maps version, but how I think you considered well how the audience might be quite frustrated about trying to navigate through that.
It can be quite fiddly if you try and use Google Street View. I think you need to develop an understanding with that program first, whilst touchscreen technology is much more intuitive.
Yeah.
You just sort of tap a button and you know what's going to happen. As long as you provide enough visual cues so that they don't get frustrated. And also audio cues, like if you click something, there might be like a little boop or something sound, just to make sure that they know it's activated.
If a blind person has an old school mobile,
Yeah.
How are they going to get access to the podcast?
That is a problem, but I I think there would be other solutions, such as potentially having. Well, one thing I was considering is having like a separate sort of device that could function exclusively as a
Don't worry, finish.
as a thing that can use the application, and that somebody can come and accommodate this blind person and play the parts he wants to listen to. But otherwise, I don't think that can really be considered at this point, because it's very, very outdated, I think. I mean, ideally they would have family members or friends that potentially have access to a smartphone or to something that can play off MP3s.
It's not a way of responding that I would hope that you would do in a pitch to a real production company. That's not the solution, I don't think.
Oh, you
But
don't?
I do understand I totally understand what you're saying.
It's a bit of a frustrating scenario, because it is quite hard to reach that audience.
Have-
and that
When you've
doesn't
considered
suit.
the audio aspects, and this maybe goes for everybody, when you've considered audio aspects, can you imagine, are you expecting people to hold it to their ears, or the
I think
phone,
phones.
or like hold it and use it on speaker? Because can you imagine 10 people in the cathedral all
That is a very good
with
point.
playing audio? I mean, I could, as the cathedral, I would automatically be saying no.
I think
This is a place of
Head-
worship. This is
headphones
not for
are- I
multimedia.
think
You know,
headphones are possible to be used, but I think there should be some sort of a form of enforcing like a certain quiet nature to it.
Perhaps,
Like perhaps even distributing cheap headphones on at the trigger mechanism area.
yeah, like wireless headphones, they
Yeah.
return at the end of the
my
tour.
phone, when you put it to your ear, the screen shuts off, because otherwise I would be touching buttons with my face, right? Can you not incorporate the same kind of technology? So
be
it
possible.
cuts,
It
it
might-
stops,
it
it
might be
pauses
possible
as
to
you take it away from your head.
Integrate that
That goes for everybody.
as a default option, but just in case you do want to have it on speakers, you can sort of offer like an option.
It's really nice, the
to
idea of
disable
having
it.
that private, you know, it's me and whatever media I'm accessing through audio, but it's private, it's not going out there.
Perhaps,
I'd potentially make like an audio soundtrack to the cathedral,
perhaps, Ben,
you know.
Yeah.
have a look at, just for further research, the conceptualisation of the silent disco. Okay. Believe you me, it's very, very interesting, and I think that would eradicate that technology, which is very, very cheap. I mean, really cheap to implement. Does exist, and it's in that application of a disco, a club scenario. There is actually no sound. You get your pair of headphones, and there's lots of people with headphones experiencing the club atmosphere without any sound whatsoever. So that application may be something you need to identify in your analysis.
Are you talking about Johnny Russell's in Albert Brothers?
No, they've been doing it at festivals
Oh,
for
for
the last
sure,
3
yeah.
years.
Audio tours seem to be quite common with like separate headphones for everybody. So yeah, that's
It's about matching the technology and the product, and we have to look at the cathedral like a product. What is the unique selling point? Is it the large spaces, the history, those kind of things? And I would say that everybody should be maybe looking a little bit more deeply into those kind of things. You know, I would like to go to the cathedral and sit there for a minute in a bit of silence. How could you encourage that?
I mean,
You know,
maybe,
through
certainly
the
not
hardware
by
that you've got.
speakerphones.
maybe I mean, there may even be within the narrative, if you know, because those narratives that or the soundtracks you're going to be creating, okay, because that is an integral part to what you're required to do as part of your manufacture, if you like. Those soundtracks may say you may actually use vocal cues to say, if, as you know, if you're a tourist, sit in this position and, you know, contemplate for 30 seconds about this, you know, the serenity that you're experiencing, and then the cue comes in after a 30-second gap, so people have time to reflect and experience the ambience.
Could be quite interesting.
So, in a sense, the experience is slightly being dictated.
Yes, yeah.
But actually, when I go to the cathedral and I don't know anything about the cathedral, why should I be the one fully in charge of that tour? Because I'm only going to make a hash of it. You know, I'm only going to muck it up, really, without having, you know, when we went with the Chancellor and he took us around a little bit, it was just, I didn't mind being a passenger in that experience. I can still interact, I can still ask questions and things like that. And I'm just wondering if you could have 3 buttons. Right, I've got 10 minutes, it's my lunch break, but I want to go and visit. Press this button. You know, it's going to whisk me around it and just go through it superficially and briefly and the main things. Or, you know, I can go for the full-on intensive experience and have to sit somewhere for half an hour or something like that.
There is, yeah, I mean, there is, I think what you need to accept, and tourists, by the very nature of being tourists, open themselves up conditionally. They almost contract themselves to be passive in the experience. I know nothing about this, so I've got to take a passive position. I need to be led around.
I think these comments are going for everybody.
Yeah,
really.
definitely. I definitely feel that that's
So you guys have considered a lot of information and graphic user interfaces and technology, but the next part is, what about that experience? You know, what does the person actually want from this? What would you like in that position? You know, do you want some pictures if you're there and seeing the pictures already? Or do you want to be taken on a narrative? So for example, you could look at historic things that might have happened at Chichester Cathedral. Yeah? A certain event. And you could like have 10 buttons, right, 10 events. And it takes you around the cathedral, says go here, go there, or whatever. And kind of plays it out. Gives you some pictures of historic things. Things that you're never going to see. That you could just kind of look around at. How does that sound, Russell? So, but in order to get those ideas, you actually have to investigate into the history